Welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm glad you're here. I have with me today Jill McDonald, and it has been so fun. I'm just getting to know her. She comes highly recommended. And as I've gotten to know her, I think something that I'm the most excited about is just her passion. You can tell that she really has a heart for what she's doing, and I'm excited for you to just learn from her today and from her experiences. So, I will just tell you a little bit about her. She is a speech language pathologist, and she is also a mom of a son with autism. So, she comes with perspectives on both. Both ends, both in her personal life and her professional life. So, Jill, with that, will you tell us just a little bit more about you?
I would love to. I come from a family a large family. There was 8 kids, and
Wow.
yes, so there was always things to do, people to laugh with, jokes to have, people to get along with. And so I loved being raised in a large family. I got married, met my husband at Jackson Hole, and we were river guides at
Oh,
river camp
fun.
together. And then we moved to Alaska. We owned a bed and breakfast up in Alaska. We spent 10 years there and had 3 of our children. Um, that's where we found out that my oldest is on the spectrum, and then we moved around a little bit, finally settling in Rexford. And so that's where we live now. We now have 5 children, so we did add to our family. And so our children range from 24 down to 9 years old right now. And I am a speech therapist. I did go back to school a little bit later in life after I was a mother, and so that was quite the juggle to juggle school and children and home life and everything all
Yeah.
together. Um, it's much easier when you're younger, but I do think that I probably was more successful at my older stage because I was able to manage my time a little bit better than
Yeah.
being younger. I might not have always gotten all my homework done, but as a mom, that was really important for me to get everything done. But I am a speech therapist now. I specialize in early intervention. But I would have to say the label that I am most proud of is mother.
Love that. Love that. I love also just that example that you are that if you do go back to school later, it is possible.
It totally is possible.
Might be harder, but it is still possible. And
Well, one of the comments that was said to me when I was really contemplating whether I should go back or not, or I really want to do this, but it's so hard. One of my friends said the time's going to pass either way,
hmm,
and it can be hard for a little bit, or it can be hard for a long bit because you'll never change your situation. And so you'll never change. And so you might as well put the really, really, really hard and compact it into a few years and go back to school. And then on the other side, it's easier and you're in a different location. And I loved that. That kept me motivated. So that's what I did.
what a great friend.
Yes.
Such good advice.
Yes.
I love it. Well, so you decided to go back to school later on. Why speech?
My son was meeting all of his milestones. He had all of by the time he was 12 months old, he had about 5 verbal words. He also had 10 to 12 signs that he would use consistently. And by then something happened. I am not sure what. And I actually don't spend a lot of time contemplating it because takes it just takes space in my brain.
Sure.
But something happened between 14 months and 16 months. And he lost all of his verbal speech. He did keep about 6 to 7 words in sign that he did retain. But then he lost his eye contact, he lost his play skills, he started doing repetitive behaviors and really fell into a lot of meltdowns. And I was just shocked. In 2 months, I had a different child than I had before. And my experience was that I searched for help, and the doctor that I went to, he says, "Oh, well, let's see what he does by the time he's 24 months." And I was like, wait and see is just not my game.
Yeah.
I'm not a patient person, I guess. And I saw my child needed help. And so we were up in Alaska, and I contacted the early intervention um, program up in Alaska. I believe it was called the Infant Learning Program in Alaska. And they instantly started helping me and instantly came to my house, and I started helping me, and we, worked. And right before he was 3, about a month before he was 3, we received the diagnosis that he was on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. And but he gained signs, but he did not regain his verbal skills. Um, Even just vocally, when he stopped babbling and stopped saying things, and vocally he only had M's and N's, and anything and everything came out his nose. All of his vowels, everything would come out his nose. And he would hum, and he would do a lot of different things, but he wasn't using his vocal language or vocal abilities at all. We worked really, really hard, and he did gain more signs throughout this time, um, but he did not start verbalizing until he was about 6 years old. And at 6 years old, he started actually producing different sounds and consonants and really looked like he was trying to communicate. And I mean, it was high fives and hands all around because it had been a long time.
Yeah.
At that time, he did have about 300 words of sign. And so he could tell me that that was a moose, and he could tell me that he wanted a ball, and he could tell me the colors. He wouldn't ever put two signs together, though.
Interesting.
So he could tell me that that moose was blue, and he could tell me it was blue, and he could tell me it was a moose, but he would never tell me it was a blue moose with sign. When he started vocalizing, we were super excited, and every once in a while we would understand what he was saying. But a lot of times, and he was getting clearer and clearer in his speech, and he would string together phrases. He never really used just one word at a time. He would always have phrases, and he would tell us, but we just didn't understand it, just didn't make sense. When he was about 7, I came to realize that he was saying phrases, yet he was using each word was phonetically backwards.
Wow.
And I've talked to lots of speech therapists, I talked to lots of different people. They have no idea what was going on.
Wow.
So with that, I was able to help him, and I would carry a teeny tiny ringed notebook around with me everywhere we went, especially in his playroom when we were playing and working on social engagement. I would write it down and then read each word phonetically backwards to try and understand if he would actually had a phrase he was telling me.
Yeah.
The phrase that really clued me in was own pots. And own pots phonetically backwards is no, stop. And he would yell at me, own pots, and get so frustrated. And the speech therapist that I was working with said, well, this own pots doesn't make sense, make it make sense. And so give it meaning. And so I had pots in the playroom, and he would yell at me, own pots, and I would give him a pot and pan and say, here's our pots. We own pots. Let's play with them. And he would just look at me like I was crazy. And I slowly understood own pots doesn't actually mean anything about any cooking utensils. It was actually no, stop, and it fit every time. And when I started looking at different things he was saying and reading it backwards, it would make sense. And so I brought this to the speech therapist, and I videoed him, and she looked at it, and she was like, about 80% of what he's saying is being said phonetically backwards. And so we started just deep diving into helping him be able to switch it. And about the time he hit about 9.5, 10 years old, he had probably about 75% of what he was saying was said correctly, and about 25% of what he was saying was still flipped. And by the time he was 12, I would say that we were able to work through all of that.
Wow. What a puzzle.
Yes.
That is incredible that you just put in the time and the effort to just keep at it until you were able to solve what was going on and start, I mean, giving that information to the speech teacher and therapist so she can work with you on helping him to reverse all of that. It speaks so much to you and so much to your son and the effort that he was willing to put in
Yes.
to be able to communicate.
So I guess to actually answer your question, what brought me to speech is my son Connor.
Yeah.
He gave me that insight of how important communication is, and how important it is to our family life, how important it is to him, how important that is. That right there, that key piece touches all areas of the life. And so when I started looking, because we've had all therapies, we've had, social therapy, we've had developmental therapies, we've had speech therapy, OT. I guess we have never touched with PT, with physical therapy. Never needed that. He was always very physical. But all the other therapies we've touched, and I would say that the speech therapy was the most important to me as a mom. And so that's where I wanted to go. But if I was to choose the most fun therapy, it would be by far occupational therapy. They always have more fun.
I love that. Well, it was interesting to me as you were telling your story that what stood out to you from the very beginning was the communication piece. Even without having any kind of speech background at that point,
Mm-hmm.
you were first cued into something is different here. Something is not aligning with where we would expect because of his communication.
Yes.
So,
Well, and I remember sitting there when he was about 4.5 years old. I was sitting there and I was watching him, and he was playing with his Toy Story toys. Toy Story was his jam. He just loved Toy Story, and he was playing with his Toy Story toys. And I was sitting behind him. He couldn't see me, and I was just taking a moment and watching my beautiful son just play and have a moment. And he was sitting there, and all of a sudden, he signed the sign for banana.
yeah.
But he didn't direct it at me. He just signed banana. And I was like, I wonder what is going on there. I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder what is going on. And about 5 minutes went by, and he had a complete meltdown. And what I realized, he thought signing banana was going to get him a banana. He had no idea that the power was telling mom the word banana. He was
Ah,
having a meltdown because what he wanted was a banana, and he was playing, and he signed banana, but did not get a banana because he never told me.
right.
And so I started working really hard that it was the mom, it was me that mattered about getting a banana. And having that connection of where
Yeah.
the power of communication comes from is not actually the word, it's telling somebody the word. And that connection of communicating, you have to have two. And so that right there was such a huge eye-opening moment because he was going through ABA therapy at that time, and he signed a banana, did not get a banana, had a meltdown. And I was like, we're missing a piece here. We need to
Yeah.
have that social connection for communication to work for him.
I've never heard a better illustration of that piece that
Mhm.
it's speaking words is just speaking words until there is a social connection.
Totally,
I thank you for
totally.
sharing that. That was a light bulb moment for me.
Oh, good. He has brought so many light bulb moments of understanding. I understand the human race better because of my son. I understand how to be a better parent because of my son. I understand communication and how development happens, all because I really looked at my son throughout his life and still now as my biggest my biggest teacher in this life. My son has so many lessons for me to learn, and I look at him as my guide of how to become better in this life.
And what a gift amongst all of the difficult that
Oh,
there's
completely. And
something so beautiful coming from it.
as long as I have that as my main thing I'm focusing on, it doesn't matter how many meltdowns I go through. It doesn't matter how many times there's been, that 5-year-old in the middle of the store in a puddle screaming and kicking. That's not what I focus on. Even though that was definitely part of my life, that working through different things, I always got to look at him as, what are you teaching? What more can I do to learn to become the mother you need so you can help me with the next step? And that was my motivation so much throughout life, and waking up day after day having such a hard, some days there would be 3 hours of meltdowns a day, and it would just be hard, and I would be spent by the end of the day. But the next day I was ready to do it again because I was able to keep him as my focus and celebrate when we did have successes.
That's just beautiful. I think again that's a beautiful example of finding your why. And just to anybody listening, it's okay if your why isn't that, but to find your why about why this is worth putting the effort into
Mhm.
is a game changer. And
Yes.
I think help change something again that could just completely bring you down to something that just has made your life incredible and helped or add to what makes your life incredible. I think there's
Completely.
so many facets. We can't just put it on one. But so thank you for sharing with us why you chose speech. I'm curious, you said that you do early intervention, and I'm curious about why you decided early intervention.
Well, speech therapy really does intake the entire breadth of an entire lifespan. You
Yeah.
can work on speech as a newborn, and meaning by that a lot of swallowing issues can
Oh,
come
yeah.
with newborns, and so there's a lot of speech therapists that are also lactation consultants, and they help with breastfeeding, they help with swallowing if there's any mechanism or any muscle discoordination in the swallow, you want to go to a speech therapist. So they can go from birth to death. You go to the older population, and there's strokes, there's Parkinson's, there's MS, there's so many different disorders that interfere with that communication and that speech. So it is a complete full breath. A lot of times when you say, oh, I'm a speech therapist or a speech and language pathologist, people think, oh, yeah, my friend, they worked on their R's in school.
Yes.
I saw you, or I saw you for my R's, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I do love all facets, but what I found is for a child to truly be successful, it really comes down. You can have the most amazing therapist in the world, but you only get them for 9 months, or you only get them for a short time of that child's life. The first and only consistent thing in that child's life is the parents. And if you can help those parents find their personal power, help those parents really become advocates, you change the trajectory of that child's life. And so I personally chose early intervention because I found this therapist that came into my home helped me with that and being able to find my personal power to become an advocate for my son. Um, I I've been on the flip side where I was just a young mom with this child going, what do I do with him? This is above and beyond my capabilities. How do I do this? And I had a professional come in. They have a degree. They've studied this in school. And I says, help me learn what to do. And I'll even admit it. Sometimes I had the attitude of go ahead and fix him.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a mom, I was like, I've tried. I can't do it. You go ahead and do this. And what I found is that the professionals that turn to me and says, how would you analyze this? What do you think's going on with him? What do you think is missing? And me turning on that analytical brain of what is it my child needs? Why do I think they're having a meltdown? What is the big question mark? My insight of knowing my child helped therapies, helped being able to help him learn how to find his voice and um, learn all the different facets of his development. And so I found the professionals turning to me for my mama gut and my insight of my child very empowering. And it helped train me to know that I was the only one that saw the private therapies and the therapies going on in school and the special ed teacher, the preschool teacher. And I was asking the questions to find out what's missing in his life. Is he having enough fun? Is he is he eating? Is he all of his physical needs being met? Are all of his developmental needs being met? Is he enjoying life? I'm the only one that could answer that and pull together all of the different things. And so I found that the more connection with parents that I have, the more I feel like I'm actually able to change this child's life. And so I'm hitting the parent when they're the most confused. They're sitting there going, I thought this was what parenthood was going to be like, and it's totally different. I don't know what's going on. Something's not connecting. I think there might be something going on with this child. Oftentimes, I'm working with parents that don't have the diagnosis, or they just get a diagnosis, or I help them find a diagnosis, and I'm there to hold their hand to help them find their power and to go through really the grieving process that all parents kind of need to go through to find that inner power. Because if you don't take time to grieve as a parent, you never are able to switch the focus from that inward. This isn't looking how it's supposed to look like. I'm not feeling how I'm supposed to feel as a parent. To what is it that's going to be the best use for my child? What do I need to become to be able to fulfill their needs? There is a switch there, and I love helping parents find that switch. And that really is that early intervention.
Oh, I love so much of what you shared. I think it's so beautiful that you had that empowering experience and you want to turn around and give it to others.
Completely.
And I love that you have just seen so many ways that not only can you help parents as helping their children to increase those communication skills, but just as you were sharing, what stood out to me was that advocacy, just
Mhm.
helping those parents to be an advocate and to see, like, again, that empowered to not only can you be a great advocate, but you have so many skills that you don't even realize you already have.
Well, and one of the things that I have learned is being a mom of an autistic child and 4 children that are not on the spectrum is that every child is special. Every child needs a unique parent. Every child needs unique eyesight on their developing needs. No one comes equipped to deal with this life. And as a mom, as a parent, we need to adjust and kind of tuck and roll with every child because new hits and comes to us every time. And if we sit there and are able to identify, analyze, and identify where they need help, we can help them because there's no one else in this world other than mom and dad. That mommy and daddy are going to be there and help back up this child. And sometimes it's just mom, and sometimes it's just dad. Sometimes you have both mom and dad. Sometimes you have the wonderfulness of having extended, family that are able to come and step in and help. But that right there is the responsibility of parenting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those thoughts. Well, I'm just thinking about these parents and that you've helped so much. I think some parents watching this, they might already know that something is going on for their child, but some of them might be wondering, is there anything going on? Are there things that you've seen? You shared some of your story and that some of the communication pieces that you saw that were kind of a trigger that, hey, something's going on. But I'm curious now, as you've gained more experience and you've worked with more families, are there things that you've found that maybe some things that are pretty obvious that parents can look for, but maybe some things that they wouldn't even know to look for in those early years to be an indicator that, yeah, maybe they need some more help with their communication?
One of the things that I really look at and really kind of help parents identify is is their child starting to communicate? We want to see some sort of communication. It can be a lot of times there's gestures. There's the 16 gestures by 16 months that we kind of want to look for. Those are pointing, using that pointing and communicating with mom to bring attention to something or to make a choice. There's clapping and yay, or there's looking at your child, and this is typically around 9 months or sometimes earlier, and says, "Oh, do you want up?" And their child raises their hands to be lifted up. There's waving bye bye or high fives or all these different gestures that are communicative. This is long before we're talking. This is oftentimes those things that are, do they have that quality of communication, that back and forth?
So if a parent was interested in those 16, what did you
Mhm.
say, those 16
16
gestures by
gestures by
16 months?
16 months.
Is that something they could just Google to
That's
see?
there.
Or
There are articles on those 16 gestures by 16 months that are definitely available. You can all so you can Google that. I oftentimes print off articles and give them to parents because
Great.
you know
Yeah.
that's something that is very important. Um, there is also imitation skills.
Mm.
We want to see long before we start verbalizing, are kids imitating parents? Are they able to play peekaboo? Are they if mom shakes some maracas, will a child pick up a maraca and shake it?
Mm-hmm.
If dad drums on the table, will they drum on the table? Will they imitate? Not so much can they shake a maraca, but will they imitate mom shaking the maraca?
Or at least attempt
Or
an
attempt?
imitation. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what we want to see, is that they're watching what's going on and they're imitating what mom and dad are doing. If an older brother or sister starts to dance, will they dance, get down with the boogie? Or if their older siblings are marching to bed, will they fall in line and march, and follow and imitate those big brothers and big sisters, or mom and dad? Then it moves on to facial expressions. Will they play peekaboo and do lip trills after you give it a try? After mom does a lip trill, or our everyone's favorite raspberries. You know, those are always so fun to see a child imitate those. But then will they move on? And if mom acts surprised, will they? Or if mom takes a drink and goes, ah, will they take a drink and go, ah, you know? And then we move on to animal sounds or environmental sounds. If mom takes a car and go, boom, and zooms her car, beep, beep, will they try it? Will they try it during play? And give it a go. Will they moo like a cow when mom sees a cow and says, "Oh, moo"? Will they try to moo, or will they pant like a dog? Or even if they're copying the dog, um, every, sometimes kids' first animal sound is panting like a dog because they see their dog panting, and it makes them give it a go. Let's try it. And so they'll do, if they're imitating, these are really, really strong indications that those verbal skills will come because they're able to do the back and forth. And you do have a moment where this child is kind of a cute little potato that just has life going on around him. And then they start engaging and they start looking for that eye contact and looking for mom. And when they see mom and mom smiles, they smile back. And then they move on to imitation and moving and doing the same things that people around them are doing. But you can also go back to those hard fastened um, milestones and averages. So there's a difference between milestones and averages. A milestone is that milestone, it's considered a milestone when 90% of the population that same age has this skill. An average is when 50% of the population has that skill. So
Okay.
it's right at milestones and averages. So if your child is at the milestone at 12 months and saying mom and dad plus one or two more words, they are at a milestone. An average at 12 months is mom and dad plus 5 or 6 words. So it's not much difference between one or two words plus mom and dad, or 5 or 6 words plus mom and dad. It's not too big, but it gets a bigger spread when we hit 18 months. If your child has, at 18 months, we want them to, their milestone is 10 words, is what we want, that milestone. So if they're saying 10 words, that means that they're at that milestone. They're hitting their milestone, but they're still 90% below the rest of the population. But an average is 50 words and starting to put two words together. So that's where the 50th percentile is. And we can talk about percentiles. Everyone's familiar with percentiles because of well baby checks. Oh, my child is at the
Yeah.
38th percentile height, then maybe the 70th percentile weight, short and chubby. Um, but, or, they're right at that 50th percentile. So we can put this same application to speech. By two, it jumps. So that milestone will be at 50, but the average is at 200.
Okay.
And so it jumps again, and there's a bigger spread between that milestone and that average. Now, if you are hitting that milestone, you probably still want to go and search out some help because they probably just need a little bit of scaffolding, a little bit of help to get to catch up with that the majority of the population of their same age. So
Great.
those are hard facts. Everyone wants hard facts of what should I look for, when should I get some help. If you are not hitting the milestones, definitely get help. But even if you're just over, you are hitting the milestones. Let's say you have 12 words by the time you're 18 months. You still probably want to go and get at least some testing done to see if there's some extra help that you can get. But even before that, it matters the quality of communication, that nonverbal communication.
Would it be fair to say that if you have questions or you are concerned, it doesn't hurt to get the help?
Yes.
Just ask somebody.
And
Oftentimes, sorry, go ahead.
oh, and I was going to say that if you have that question, it is worth just calming your mama heart
Yeah.
to ask for a developmental evaluation. A lot of times, mama hearts will go and ask a doctor, you know, what should I do? And sometimes it's getting better, but sometimes pediatricians will say, let's wait and see. Because there
Yeah.
is a natural language explosion that happens, and they're hoping that language explosion happens. But I think it's worth calming your mama heart to just ask for that developmental evaluation, and they'll look at all 5 domains and all 5 domains of development, which are, you'll put me on the spot, communication, cognitive, fine motor, gross motor, and adaptive skills.
You got them.
Okay.
You did great.
Woo. And so if they'll look at all of 5 of those, and it is interesting because sometimes it's the communication that the parents are worried about, but their child's not walking and they're 18 months. And sometimes that child puts on hold that communication until they feel steady on their feet and until they're moving with there's something about those gross motor skills and then working into the fine motor. We start out and we move in. That really will trigger that conversation. And so maybe you have concerns in the communication, but it's really that fine motor that we need to start with. And so it's kind of interesting to see because every child is special and only some of them get that special diagnosis, but every child is special and every child is going to have just a little bit of a different pathway for development.
Yeah, that's a great point. Correct me if I'm wrong here too, but isn't there usually, if you are requesting an evaluation or going in to see if your child maybe should have an evaluation, isn't there usually some kind of just a screening just to see if further evaluating is needed?
So I went through the Alaska infant toddler program. But what I did, and you can hook up with the infant toddler program a couple of different ways. You certainly can get a referral through your doctor, That is one way that a lot of people find the infant toddler program, but you don't have to have a doctor referral. A mom referral, a self referral can be all you need. So you can
Perfect.
contact, just type in Infant Toddler Program of Idaho and or any other state that you're from, and you will get a self referral website that you can refer. And what they'll do is they'll send out a developmental specialist, someone with that education in early development, that will start the testing and start figuring out where it is that you might need some extra help. If your concerns, now in the state of Idaho, they do send out two evaluators. They send out to the developmental specialist that is qualified in all areas. They also send out a specialist. So if you're sitting there and talking and your 18-month-old isn't walking yet, or your 9-month-old isn't crawling yet, they might send out a PT to also do
Oh,
an
okay.
extra evaluation just on that one area. And the developmental specialist will cover all areas, but then that PT will just cover that gross motor. Or if you are having feeding issues, you might get a SLP or an OT to come and look at what's going on with eating. Or if you get speech or language delays, concern in this area, you might have a speech therapist also come out. And so there's a lot of different areas that they want to look at, but they really want to look at the parent's concern, because the parents' concern, and there's been studies on this. I love reading when they do studies on parents, but there is a study done on this that oftentimes, if a parent is concerned, there is a delay. There
Mm-hmm.
is help that is needed. They're not as good. They know there's a delay. They're not as good at pinpointing what it is. Parents
Sure.
sometimes don't understand, or they can't say this is what I need, but they do know there's a delay. And so if you can key into that mama gut and go in and
Trust that instinct.
trust that instinct,
Yeah.
because there is something there that you know your child better than anyone else. um, and then have the professionals come and look at the entire spectrum, because you may not be aware of the adaptive skills they should be having at this age, or the communicative or the cognitive skills they should be having. Your only concern might be communication, or your only concern might be, are they walking or not, where there might be other areas that they may need some supports in. And so it's really, really good to know that oftentimes, even if it's just to calm that mom heart of saying, I'm worried, and having that developmental then saying, you know what, you're worried, but you're doing a good job, is worth that peace of mind. And
Yeah.
so just calling and getting that is worth it.
I think it's also important for people to know that you still hold on to the decision making power then. So
Mm-hmm.
that information is gathered, but then you get to decide what to do with it. Are you
Exactly.
going to accept some maybe state offered therapies and supports? You now have information to take to some private agencies as well, to look into supports that are available that way. Oftentimes, there's specific therapists that they identify the area of need, like you were talking about, and then there's a therapist for every area of need that will address what's going on for your child. But there's also often a private counterpart
Mm-hmm.
that families can look into. So there's often like as the state that you're living in will offer some kind of speech therapy, but there are many, many private speech therapists, for example.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And it can look any way the mom and dad want it to look.
yeah, yeah.
You guys completely have that choice and that empowerment. Now, with private therapy, they do a wonderful job at really zeroing in on your child and their need. And oftentimes you take them to their clinic and they work really, really hard. And they oftentimes can work 2 times a week with your child. And there's a lot of progress that can move there. With the state infant toddler program, they come in and they work with the parent, and they work with the parent and help give those skills. Okay, this is where your child is, and this is a strategy that you can help your child with and fold it into your everyday routines. If you're that way, if you're sitting there and changing a diaper and singing head, shoulders, knees, and toes with that child, and they're learning vocabulary and interaction and social fun with that everyday routine, and that's how you're working on speech therapy, it's going to look different than going to a private clinic.
Yeah.
Both are valuable and they can actually complement each other very, very well. But they do look different. And so if you're thinking, oh, this speech therapist is going to come in twice a month with the state to work with my child, but 2 hours a month isn't doing much, that's because you forgot to wrap in the parent's part in that.
Yeah, that's great delineation. Thank you.
But the private therapy, if you're wanting that speech therapist to work directly with your child all the time, 100%, you might be best going to that private clinic because they do a fabulous job with really zeroing in on helping that child and getting enough consistent therapies to help move the ball on their skills.
And it doesn't have to be either or, right?
Exactly.
Parents
It
can
can
do
be
both.
both.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that and giving us that breakdown. And
Yeah.
that's important information, I think, as parents are trying to decide, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of helping parents to know what to do, I'm curious if there are just some like general strategies that families, whether a child is receiving supports or not, just some general practices that help to foster that good communication development in the home.
Yes. One of my favorite strategies is to fold in songs into routines. If a child, every time they get in a car, is singing Wheels on the Bus, go round and round, they can first participate with the actions and they can be part of it, participating with the actions. And it's really, really, really important for the developing mind of a toddler to have predictable routines. That predictable routine of Wheels on the Bus going round and round, and I get buckled in my seat, and now the windows are going up and down, and I get, we turn on the car, and the doors on the bus going open and close, and we're driving down the road, can be really, really fun and comforting in a world that doesn't always make sense for a child um, who's experiencing everything for the first time. You think about how many times you've gotten in the car and buckled up versus how many times a toddler remembers getting in the car and buckling up. It's different.
I've never considered that anxiety piece, that you could lower anxiety or
Yes.
discomfort with that. Thank you.
Well, and one of my very, very favorite examples that I use all the time is a purple dinosaur made a transition of cleaning up toys and going to something else very, very routine all through a song.
Yeah.
And I have seen toddlers or preschoolers cry, clean up, everybody, everywhere, as they put their toys away. And by the time the song's over and the toys are clean, they're ready for circle time.
Yeah.
And it helps them with transitions. It helps them with that predictability. They get to run out some of their frustration in a unwanted transition by crying through the song, but they still do it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, diapering becomes really hard.
Which I just want to highlight that those tears, what you're seeing is the development of coping skills.
Yes.
It's not just that they're suffering.
Yes.
But it's learning how to.
They can get through this.
Yeah.
Even though they still want to play. This routine is unwanted, But because they have this song, they can move through it and go to the next one.
Oh, I love that. Versus
Versus,
just
you're
sitting
done,
down
go.
and crying, and now it is a miserable experience
Mhm.
for the child, sometimes for the caregiver.
Yes,
But this is now difficult and uncomfortable, but still getting through, and so much overall more pleasant for the child than to just
totally.
sit there and
And cry it out.
yeah. Sorry,
Um,
I interrupted your thought though.
you're
Diapering.
just fine. A diapering oftentimes becomes a wrestling match between mom and
Yeah.
toddler. I have laid my big leg over the middle of the child to hold them down while I'm changing that diaper, and they're squirming and trying to wiggle out of it. But if I make a game out of it, and sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the child is really quite motivated by the wrestling match. just so
Fair enough.
just so you know, every child's a little different. But oftentimes I've been able to make a game out of it. And seeing head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and then Zerber. Zerber is my family's word for blowing on a tummy.
Uh-huh.
So this is a new vocabulary. So Zerber on their tummy and give them a tickle, and then go back to cleaning. Or when a child is really, really, really hungry and wanting dinner, and it's so hard to wait, even for that microwave to ding. Sometimes this is the way we make our dinner, make our dinner, can help the child know that it's coming. Because every time we're making dinner or every time we're making lunch, we sing, this is the time, this is how we make our lunch, make our lunch, make our lunch. It helps the child get in the rhythm of, oh, after this song, it will be time. I will eat. It's coming, because it helps things become predictable.
Oh, I love that. If anybody out there listening has some access to research on music and development and singing and development, I would love for you to post that in the
It's
comments.
it is fabulous, and it helps articulation if your child is struggling with
Yeah.
articulation, or if they're struggling with language. The songs, then that repetition can help with both. If
Love
it's
it.
articulation, sometimes those toddlers are really struggling with articulation because they're juggling so much. They're having to think of what to say, how to say it, and what's coming next. Where the wheels on the bus, they go round and round and round and round, and you can do that all day. And so they can practice round and round and round, or E-I-E-I-O, they don't have to think of what comes next because it's already set up. So it takes off that cognitive load of having to think, what should I say? How should I say it? Oftentimes that cognitive load is so heavy that toddlers will instantly say no. No, because they don't want to make a choice between cheese and apple. Even though they're really hungry and they really want that cheese stick, they'll just say no because it's less cognitive load. And so if you understand, oh, if I set it up where the cognitive load is less, then maybe I'll get more language out of my child. Maybe I can help this child tell me more and help me help them, because sometimes no is not helpful.
I'm gonna switch gears here a
Uh-huh.
little bit from what you're saying. I love this idea of the cognitive load, and sometimes it's through music, like you're talking about. Sometimes it's those visual strategies of like,
Yes,
you won't right now. You only have to point to that,
exactly,
or maybe they will
exactly.
say, and because of that, maybe they will say apple as they
Uh-huh.
point. So right along with that, this is a argument that I hear often brought up, and I think maybe it's a misconception, that people will say things like, I don't want to do sign, or I don't want to do a speech device because I want that verbal communication. I'm worried that that will take away, or that they'll quit trying to talk. Will you speak to that a little bit? What your
I
thoughts are?
I would love to, because AAC, which is alternative. Oh my goodness. Oh, all my SLP colleagues are going to
It,
shake their finger.
augmentative
Augmentative communication.
communication.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
yeah.
you. AAC is my favorite area because it down in its bare roots, it is functional communication. You are trying to get this child to participate in the communication that's happening. And that can be verbal, that can be pointing, that can be speech devices, that can be sign. The thing that moms and adults need to realize around this child, we never just do this. We always say, more. You
Yeah.
want more apple. And that sign is being told to them, but it's giving them the word is being told to them. They're getting that verbal input, but they're also getting the additional of this visual sign. So it helps increase their understanding of language. It also, which is huge, you cannot use language unless you understand language. But it also gives them an outlet that says, yes, yes, I want more. Or
Yeah.
I want an apple, or candy. That's always everyone's favorite is candy,
So
especially
true.
after Halloween. Um, but it gives them a way to communicate as they're trying to control their articulators. There's so much between the brain and their muscle movements and everything to get words out. We have no idea how hard it is. Kids and all the entire human race will always go with the easiest way to communicate. If it is too hard to communicate, they will choose not to. So if you give them a pointing to visual choices or pointing to a speech device that will talk for them, they will use that. But the minute that it is easier to verbalize, they will use that. And so if you just trust how lazy your child truly is really what it comes down to. And you can go to you. It is hard for parents to learn to sign more or sign or use a speech device because we are lazy too. It is easier for us to vocalize. So if you can trust that step, then you understand how useful that functional communication of an AAC is in a child's life because right now they can't vocalize, they can't say it.
Yeah.
Like my son, he did do sign and he knows all the signs of all the animals because that was his love. And so we have all the signs down, but he couldn't vocalize. And even after he started vocalizing, it was hard for him. And so having that sign to back up and tell me what he wanted to play again, again, again. He wanted more food. That was really important for him to have that backup. So he knew he was able to make that choice. He was communicating. Did that answer
Oh,
that?
I love that. And my experience, you can speak more to
Mhm.
this, but my experience over and over again was that if there was a child who was capable of producing that speech,
Yes, they
that
would.
they were much more likely to do it if
Mhm.
we first started with sign or with an
Totally.
AAC. And then, like you were, I love the way that you broke that down again,
Mhm.
that it just goes back to what's most efficient.
Yes,
And they're going to get to what is most efficient as they develop those skills.
completely. And it is shown far before our kids are ready to communicate vocally, they can communicate with sign. The kids as young as 6 months old can start to tell mom that they're hungry. They would like some milk. They would like to eat at 6 months old. Long before they can say, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And so what that does, actually introducing sign earlier will help the child have a more robust language because it's working those language areas right here in this brain and getting that vocabulary in the brain long before they're able to produce it.
That's so fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yes.
I hope that that will help answer that question for
Yes.
many parents, many families, and just help assure that they're not going to not talk ever because you introduce another communication method at the beginning. There's still a really good possibility that they will gain those skills.
Yes.
Going back to throughout, you've really talked about things that you've done both professionally and personally to help other parents. And I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. She didn't know I was going to do this, but it's really exciting. Jill is actually being honored currently as I guess in the past, and it's being recognized again that you were nominated. Was it Mother of the Year?
Yes.
For the state of Idaho because of the help that she gives to other families who find themselves in experience similar to hers. And I'd love just to. I know that there's many other people that want to help and they would like to help however they can. Maybe they are parents themselves who have gone through um, raising a child with any sort of need outside of the typical, or maybe it's they are professionals but want to do more with their knowledge. I would love if you don't mind just sharing maybe some ways that people can be a help. How can you help other parents? How can you mentor them, or whatever the case may be?
I would say sharing yourself, sharing yourself, sharing your strengths, sharing your compassion with those that are going through what you see as could be hard. It is hard to parent a typical child, let alone a child that doesn't respond how you expect. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with the child. Doesn't mean that they are not just exactly what they should be. And it doesn't mean that there's not endless hope for this child. You could have a child that really struggles, never is not talking anything else, but then ends up, being the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. Who knows?
Yeah.
I always love to point out that Einstein didn't talk until I think he was 5, and Edison didn't talk until he was 4. And Edison's first word, and this I love it because it just shows him. Edison's first word was, "Say that again. I didn't understand."
Oh my. That's a whole phrase.
Yeah, too.
Oh,
and
wow,
so
yeah.
and so I love that because it shows that there's so much more behind the silence, so much more going on with that child. But there's also so much more with that mom. You have no idea how hard, because this is your child. This is your inner soul. You're putting everything into this child and you love that child so much. I had a wonderful lady at my church that every week she would come up and give me the warmest hug and just the biggest smile and just look at me and say, "How are things going this week? This week, how are things going?" And I would tell her my celebrations for my child. Today, Connor said no 5 times, but I had 6 activities to do. I win. I would celebrate and, the smallest things. And she would say, "That is wonderful. I am so glad. Now, how are you doing?" And having that right there, she wanted to know what was happening with my son. And when she would ask me, "How are you doing this week?" I would immediately go to my son's celebrations, my son's achievements, my son, where he is, what he's doing. And she would celebrate with me, but then ask me and see me. "How are you doing this week? I understand your son had successes. I want to know about you." having that hug every week and being seen every week was so important for me, for my village, to be also seen, because sometimes as a special needs mom, everything is about my child.
Yeah.
Everything. I live, breathe my child. I make dinner based on what I believe he's going to eat. Um, there's nothing that's about me. And taking care of the caregiver is really, really important, whether it's a toddler or whether it's older parents. Taking care of the caregiver is so important, and it's so opposite of what our focus is throughout the day. Our focus is taking care of this child, but we need to stop and look and take care of ourselves. Sometimes it's that other person, it's that community member that sits there and has to help us do that, because our number one priority is our child. So having someone, a next door neighbor, having a little old lady every week at church giving me a hug and asking me how I'm doing is very, very important.
I love what you said there too at the beginning about how you were able to tell about that week, because I think sometimes people ask how things are going or how you're doing and you give an answer, and then like that's how they see things, where there's this dynamic that's happening. Things are constantly changing, things are constantly different.
Mm-hmm.
And having somebody ask you specifically about that week recognizes that your story isn't this one answer that you gave one time, so now that's how I'm going to see things for you. It
Yes.
allows you to tell your ongoing story.
Well, and it also helped me be able to focus on the positives in my life, because at the same time that I was consistently every day, my son would have a 3-hour meltdown every day, and
So
it was screaming and kicking and sweating because everything, and there was nothing I could do. He was so dysregulated, there was nothing I can do for him until he got himself to exhaustion, and then he would allow me to help him. It was so hard because sometimes I would just sit down and cry with him,
yeah,
because as a mom, I could not do anything else. But I also was able to sit there and realize what I could do that was a success. Um, there was a time in my son's life, and it makes me giggle, because I allowed this, and so often people don't understand. But we went into the playroom and we would play, and I would have my children doing other things with other people, so I could concentrate and not have any other distractions other than just this one child. And I would go in there and we would work on his flexibility, his attention span, his communication. We would even work on looking at people and looking at faces. He had a unique quality to him where no one outside of his family actually had names. They didn't matter. Anyone outside of his family just didn't matter. It was just his family that mattered, and they are the only ones that had names. And so we looked at all kinds of things. And then, as I was having other people come in and do kind of a social therapy kind of with him, we had to go through a stage where Nick was our very first worker, but not all guys are named Nick. There is also Russell, and there was also David, and there was also um, Josue. Sorry, his name slipped my mind. We had all kinds of different people, but you could not just say, you're coming in to work with me, so you must be Nick.
yeah.
You had to actually identify them by their name. Same with with all the women, all the college age women that came in and worked with my son. He wanted to name all of them Julie. And I was like, no, this one really is Amy. She has her very own name. And so it was very, very interesting because that not recognizing or not identifying anyone outside of his family continued until he was like 12.
Wow.
Because it did not matter to him. And so we would go in that playroom and we would work on all these different things and looking at people's faces a lot just so we would get comfortable. And I was trying to implement that how fun it is to look at mom because I figured if he was looking at me, he could learn how to talk. And so I would celebrate every time he looked at me. And I mean, it was one of those things that was really, really important to me to connect with him. And sometimes connection was just a little bit outside of his comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was about 3 when he started putting me in the closet. And he would just take my hand and push me in the closet and shut the door. And I would just giggle and laugh because I was dismissed. I was dismissed. I was too much. And so what I would do is I would let him put me in the closet, give him a break, and then I would quietly step out of the closet and sit there for a little bit. And then I would look for opportunities to engage him again. But sometimes it was just too much. It was just too much for him to have me interfere into his own very own world, that he had to just put me away, just like all the toys. We would put them away in the closet. He would put mom away in the closet. And some days I had to sit there and say, he did not let me play. He did not take any of my opportunities to communicate. He did not let me engage at all. But I was able to get out of the closet 4 times today. And I took that as a success and I celebrated it as a success because otherwise I give up.
I love your mother's intuition there too, that allowed you to not be offended, but to see the situation for what it was. And that's a big win too. The wins that you had at seeing his success, but also I think it's a big win in the way that you handle things. And I think it's important for, like you said earlier, with that person that just was checking on you, that you get to celebrate as a parent when you've handled a situation really well too. I think that's
Completely.
just as important as your child,
Mhm.
that you're celebrating them.
And I had no control of when he was going to take my offer to communicate, when he was going to engage with me. There's nothing I could do to make him.
Yeah.
All I could do is love him and offer him another opportunity to communicate, offer him another opportunity to participate with me or to engage or to have that connection. If I always was there with love and always was there with another opportunity, I knew there would be some time he would take that opportunity.
And I think your success is measured in your offering that ability, not in his taking the offer.
I could not link my success to his choices because his choices are his. They have nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
The reason why Connor is Connor as an adult today is because he did all the work. My success is being there and offering and loving every chance I had an opportunity and not giving up.
I love that.
I think it's Edison. I love quotes.
That's great. Keep them coming.
I think it is Edison that when he was asked, by a reporter and says, you have had 10,000 failures of making a light bulb. how do you deal with all that failure? And he says, I haven't had one failure. I've found out 10,000 ways it doesn't work.
That.
I love that because 10,000 failures, he gained knowledge with each one of those ways it didn't work that led to a way that was very successful. I look at my child and I sat there and maybe he did not take my opportunity any one single time during our 2-hour play period. But I always left that playroom. My goal entering the playroom was to leave with one extra idea of how I could offer another opportunity.
Such a
That
good
was
idea.
my success.
Yeah.
Because if I linked it onto him after 6 years of not having any communication or not having any verbal communication or only having one word of signs said to me over and over and over, I would have given up.
Yeah.
But because I was successful every single time I dealt with my son, I was going to claim that success because no one else can claim it. My child is not going to look like someone else's child. I cannot compare and find out who's better because my child is on a different pathway.
Yeah.
They can't even be compared.
And you're
My
not going to have somebody coming at the end of every day saying, you did a great job today.
exactly
It's not going to
exactly.
happen.
I needed to find that within myself, and that was the only way I could do it. That's also the only way I got through school
Oh,
for
sure.
myself.
Yeah.
Because even though I did get grades at the end, I needed to know that it was me and how I felt. Did I learn from this class? Am I going to achieve what I want to achieve in life by learning and taking the opportunity every single time? I had one professor tell me that everyone pays the same amount for school.
Hmm.
And it is up to you if at the end of school, if you ended up with a bicycle or a Ferrari.
I love that so
Because
much.
everyone's paying the exact same amount, and you can overpay and end up with a bicycle by how much effort you put into it, or you can put in a lot of effort and end up with the best deal of your life by ending up with a Ferrari because you really took advantage of every opportunity. And I was bound and determined to make that for me, but it really rang true to me because I wanted that same thing for my son.
Such good life advice there. I love it. Well, just you kind of answered this already, but I'm curious if you have more to say about this idea of it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody wanted to help within the village, what advice would you give them on how they can help?
Um, when I thought about a lot about this question, and I am going to direct it to um, a very tender population of everyone's village because I have been asked this particular question over and over and over, and those are the grandmas. The grandmas that are sitting back, they've raised their children, and their beautiful child is now struggling to raise their absolutely beautiful and wonderful grandchild, and they sit back and they're trying to help that their daughter or their son um, raise this child, and they want to help. Their hearts are in such a good spot. But oftentimes I see that there's conflict because they're trying to jump in and say what they would do
Yes.
and how they would raise being the parent because they're the ones with the parenting experience, by the way, which is true.
And hard to see that struggle when you feel like you've got a solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. My advice is I want you to continue being the parent to your child. Don't try to parent your grandchild. You are most valuable when you take care of your child's needs. your child is working their darndest to take care of their child's needs. They need someone to help them with their needs. And so sometimes having that grandma just give them their extra hug and saying, I'm so proud of you. You are doing such a good job is exactly what that parent needs to get through the next day. Or sometimes that grandma coming over and giving them a big hug and saying, oh, I see what you're doing. You are doing this. You are showing so much love. You love your child so much, and I love you. Sometimes that grandma's help in supporting and parenting their child is exactly what's needed, because having competition parenting that younger child, that grandchild, is not what your child needs. And I know that's such a unique situation that nobody ever thinks of, but I think it's a great viewpoint because grandmas are so valuable. They are so much what moms and dads need is they need those grandparents. They don't need extra parenting. They don't need extra parenting for their child. They are trying their very hardest and they see the full picture. They can look to you and ask you for help, and you can give them that help when it's needed. But they may not look to you and ask you to love them, or look to you and ask them to tell them that you're proud of them. But that's what they need.
Oh, I love that so much. I think that that is such a great perspective, such a good point, and I think that there's a lot of parents out there that are just like, yes, thank you. You've exactly captured in words what I've been feeling, and now there's a way to say it, and so thank you for taking that perspective, for not answering with just the general, but looking at that specific population. I think that's wonderful. Um, I really appreciate you being here today. But before I let you go, as I mentioned, she did get Mother of the Year in Idaho, but also I think this is a cool opportunity because she was actually highlighted in a book, and this book doesn't just highlight her; it highlights many people in the state of Idaho who have done some really great things for people around them. So, kind of expanding this village idea today. Do you have that book with you? Do you mind showing that?
I do.
Because I think for you, what you've done, but also for these, 43 people, these other
43 Idaho women. So this is Incredible Idaho Women, 43 Inspiring Stories for All Ages. They called me up and interviewed me, and they put me in the book with 42 other women. Some of them are alive, some of them are not. Um, but it was such an honor, and the reason why they picked me was because I was Mother of the Year for American Mothers is a nonprofit organization that has been running for like 80 years, I think. Um, Eleanor Roosevelt created it, and the very first National Mother of the Year was Eleanor Roosevelt's mother, which I think is fabulous. But thank you. It was such an honor to be Mother of the Year. It's such an honor to be added to this book. But I love it because they not only highlighted 43 women, incredible Idaho women, they also used 10 Idaho authors to write up all the stories, and they used 10 Idaho artists to create portraits. And so, yeah, that this is the book launching is actually tonight at the Idaho History Museum here in Boise, and so that's actually why I get to come over to this side of the state is to go to that. But yeah, it's very fun.
Well, that timing worked out great for me.
Yeah,
I definitely benefited.
I was super excited to come and talk to you in person.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun.
It's been great. I have learned so much from you. So thank you. And I know other people are going to learn a lot as well. So thank you for your time. And
well, thank you, Julie, for letting me come and asking me to come do this. It's definitely been, this is a passion of mine. I love motherhood. I love helping those special children. And I don't care if you have a diagnosis or not. I honestly believe we all need to learn how to communicate
Yes.
better. None of us come to this world being able to naturally do it. And so it's something that if there is a hiccup or a struggle, um, we don't even realize as moms how to help. And so I really, really, really love this position that I am and my profession that I get to do. If if I won the lottery, I would go back the next day to do my job because I love it so much.
That is great, and I feel again that that passion is going to come through to people as they listen. That was one of the first things that stuck out to me as I talked to you, was that there's this genuine passion and love for what you do and who you serve, and
Yes.
that's incredible.
Yes.
If there's somebody that you would like to honor, a mother or a speech language pathologist, or if you have some communication advice, I invite you to leave that in the comments. If there's other topics or people that you're interested in hearing about or from, I invite you to leave that in the comments as well. And if this has been helpful, I also invite you to like, share, subscribe, and just help get the word out there that this resource is available. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time.